Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today with us in looking through the list of those who are here for this particular session. I'm also really thrilled about how many familiar names I see from this morning. So people have been here all day, and that's terrific. My name is David Greenham, and I'm the board chair of the Maine Arts Commission. And on behalf of everybody at the commission, including the staff and commission members, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming to this workshop, Creating Welcoming, Inclusive Art Spaces. Before we dive into this session, we're going to be joined by Maine Artist Fellowship recipient Michael O. Michael O is a singer, songwriter, performer, and producer who harnesses his personal and cultural influences to create a powerful sound. So please enjoy a performance by Michael O.
Hi, my name is Michael Odakino Kibo, and along with my friend Marco Fazio, we're going to sing for you. I am so honored to have been named a fellow. It is an amazing, amazing honor, and I'm so grateful for it. So special thanks to the Maine Arts Commission. Thank you so much. So this song is called Your Way. It's an original song, and hope you enjoy it. I did feel in your way. I did bottle your way, yo. Love you today, yo, baby. Love you today, yo, baby. I did feel in your way. I did bottle your way, yo. Oh, love me today, yo, baby. Love me today, yo, baby. Oh, elele, mama, elele, mama, yes. My baby, Tina, my ladies. Lady, when I see my baby on the corner, I tell her, baby, don't be shy. Oh, I like you, so don't be lying. Come on, baby, let us go for a ride. Tonight, come, baby, give me tonight. Come, baby. I did feeling your way. I did model your way, yo. Love you today, oh, baby. Love you today, oh, baby. I did feeling your way. Oh, I did model your way, oh. Oh, love me today, oh, baby. Love me today, oh, baby. Oh, fine girl. So now you are the way for EKG. You are the way for my baby. So now you are the way for EKG. You are the way for my baby. Fine girl. Fine girl. Oh, fine girl. Fine girl. So now you are the way for EKG. You are the way for my baby. So now you are the way for EKG. You are the I didn't feel how I didn't bother your way. Oh, I love you today, oh, baby. Love me today, oh, baby. I did feel how we go. Oh, so I did bother your way, oh, love me today, oh, baby. Love me today, oh, baby. Again, thank you so much, and have a happy and safe New Year. Thank you so much.
How awesome to just take a few minutes and sit back and smile. So thank you, Michael O. And there is more information about him and where to find his music in the chat and online. So for this important and timely discussion, we are joined by a panel of remarkable artists and organizers to discuss their experiences with creating more inclusive art spaces. And moderating this discussion is my friend Marty Prattenger. And Marty is a force of nature, a theater artist, a playwright, an activist, and a pioneer of arts-based civic dialogues. She's the founder of Art at Work, a national initiative putting creativity to work, strengthening city government's ability to meet challenges of inequity, partisanship, and climate emergency. Now, as with previous presentations today, we're going to encourage you to put your questions in the question and answer box on your screen, and we'll have time at the end for the panelists to respond. But without further ado, please welcome Marty Pottinger.
I'd like to start out by thanking you all, well, all of you, for what you've already done on behalf of creating a welcoming and inclusive and equity plus world here in Maine, the best we've achieved so far. And knowing that we're all at home right now looking at various versions of screens, I wanted to just take a moment to welcome you to slow down, locate your heart, and clear your mind, and consider, if it's possible, to turning off your email and your texts and all the other bings and bangs and boons just for the next 60 minutes while we get to spend this time together. Not essential, but perhaps. It took a long time for the confusions and oppressive structures of our institutions operating to develop, but I don't think it has to take that long for us to come together to re-examine, re-envision, and recalibrate. And during that time, we get to seed lifetime friendships, discard confusions and false conclusions, as we engage the wisdom and expertise of individuals that are our neighbors and colleagues and friends and co-residents, like the worker from Millennicket's closed paper mill, the Penobscot professor at UMO, the autistic software engineer at IDEX, the healthcare professional from the South Sudan who's taking care of your mother, or the lesbian lobster boat captain out of Stonington. And I don't know that there is such a person, but I'm a big believer in keep hope alive. A part of this reimagining and restructuring is how we do it, and who we do it with, is facing truths, tough truths, distortions that we've lived with, and emotions in our own selves that are often painful, certainly as painful as they are revelatory, but we get to do it together. I think that's really key, not alone. I'd like to invite each of you to imagine a photograph right now, do a little imagining thing. Imagine a photograph of yourself, of you, where you look as gorgeous and lovely as you actually do, where you can tell that. Okay, so imagine that photograph. And then imagine you're holding some kind of awesome little writing implement and you write "never alone" along the bottom. That's what I'm talking about. And as Martin Luther King Jr., happy birthday, made so clear, the damage that racism or any oppression causes doesn't just impact the group that's targeted, it poisons all of us. And I can speak from personal experience that when you actually get a chance to do the work to free yourself of that poison, you're actually reclaiming some of the joy and aliveness that we get to see. Hey, I'm in South Portland. That's an airplane. I'm guessing you can hear it. Some of the joy and aliveness that we can easily see on a lot of 2-year-olds. Doing this work is exciting and it's exhilarating and it's scary. And for many of us, the Black Lives Matter movement has been a particularly informative, but also inspiring. It's like the women's movement in the 60s and 70s that I got to be a part of, where we see some huge, seemingly unmovable structure actually shake and move, and we go forward. So what you do makes a difference. And for me, getting to be a part of this particularly diverse, differently wisdomed team this afternoon is one of the gifts. So let's get started. Hopefully my teammates will unhide themselves and come and join us all on screen. And it seemed particularly appropriate that everyone get to, we figured out an order to go in. There's 5 of them. I won't be speaking much until the end. I'll be asking questions, but we'll start with Moon and do introductions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here in this really important and really honoring conversation. I would first like to slow down, and I know you might see my name spelled out in the ways that my parents gave it to me, and I always love to honor that piece of my identity. So my name is pronounced Nyemun. And the way that you say that is you allow your tongue to touch the roof of your mouth as you start the beginning of it. So it's Nyemun. And my full name is Nyemun Wang Machar. And I come from the Nuer tribe of South Sudan, where my father is from. And any Nuer girl that you will meet, her name will always start with NYA, and it means daughter of a time. And so my second part of my name is Moon, which means fertile ground. So I am daughter of fertile ground. My father is a farmer, and the ground was good to him as my mother was carrying me. So it tells a little bit about the time that I came and entered this world. So yes. And if you can't pronounce that, don't worry. You could go and rewind this video and practice, but you could also just call me Moon in the interim. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Newell. I'm the Executive Director and Senior Partner to Abenaki Nations for the Abbey Museum in Bar Harbor, Maine. And I live in Ellsworth these days and grew up in Madocnagook, which is the place where the land slopes towards the water, the name of my community, Indian Township in the English language. And the word I want you all to learn is my identity. People often ask, how do you see yourself? And I always tell people that I'm Pescadamokadic or Pescadamukadi, which means in English, which is the English version is Passamaquoddy, which translates to the people who spear pollock. And that refers to our traditional lifeways that have existed here for thousands of years. And we still live in our traditional territory at the mouth of Scudig, otherwise known as the St. Croix River, currently the border between US and Canada. And in these new days, getting to see our friends, our relatives on the other side of the border finally getting recognition, as colonization kind of figured that only one side got to get recognition all of this time. And now we're finally starting to see that come full circle. So thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Samuel James. I am a musician living in Portland, Maine. I'm also a writer. I have a column for Mainer News called Racisms, and the music that I play is primarily focused on Black American folk traditions. And I also am a staff writer for blackgirlinmaine.com. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bridget Rankowski, performer Bridget Sinclair. I use mixed pronouns, so she, he, they. I'm the founder and executive director of the Portland-based social circus called The Way We Move. I'm a queer disabled circus performer, mermaid, advocate, and fire breather who works to bring more magic into the world. I work on state and national boards to help create positive change with disability legislation, as well as through artistic endeavors, which we'll be talking about more during this panel.
Thanks, Bridget.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bridget Matros, and I do outreach and programs for kids and families in Belfast, Maine for Waterfall Arts. And I also develop programs for families at Boston Children's Museum for about 10 years.
Awesome. Lovely. Good. So we wanted to have a real, we wanted to not shy away from anything that's kind of like tough and controversial, because we know we're going to have to go there. And if we're really gonna get traction and make a difference. So we were gonna, let's assume we're all sturdy enough, eh? And what good time we have in our times these days to take tough stuff on ourselves. So we're going to do a round. Everyone's going to get a few minutes. We're going to go in the same order. And the question is, where are arts organizations missing the mark as we try to be more welcoming and inclusive? And you know, what a gift to find out where we're actually missing the mark so far with these folks' perspective. And then as part of that question, we're going to ask, where can you give us one example of an experience as an artist here in Maine? Because although some of us run organizations and we're artists, we're all artists as well. And can you give us one experience as an artist here in Maine that left you, oops, really? That's the question? I don't think so. One way that you might one way you might have felt shut out, and one way to fix it. One way, you know, I was trying to ask a question that's like, okay, what didn't work and what did work? Okay, we'll go from there. So Moon, you're on.
All right, yeah, that's an awesome question, and I think that one of the ways that I think that the mark is missed or isn't as I guess charged as it should be in task is understanding that representation is not tokenism and representation is not sprinkled. I think that I work and I mix my art with a lot of the policy work that I do. I do policy work in the mental health system. And so when I sit at a table, and many tables, and the conversation of culture comes up and all the heads turn to me because I'm the most pigmented person and they think that I am some sort of ambassador of culture, I think correcting that assumption is very, very important, and understanding that do not represent the masses. And so if you're sitting at a table and you have 2 people in that does not diversify your table. I think it's really important to go and look at the experiences and backgrounds and the conditioning and the environments that people have grew up in, so that they could be able to give you an adequate representation of the demographics that you are trying to service, represent, or speak towards or for. So I think that being a lot more assertive about having equal representation, so that it's like more half and half, is really, really important. And I also think that when you talk about what art means to a community, really respecting that that in itself is another layer of diversity that you have to bring into the conversation, because each community, each individual, each life experience has its own art and representation that needs that respective space. And so I think that it's really, really crucial that if you want to be able to relate or find or represent, have like relatable representation within your organization or movement, that you really go in and see who is in your community and where they aren't represented at your table. And if you need to have somebody step aside in order for that representation to come onto your table, that you really are very, very quick and assertive in the ways that you're doing that. So yeah, I think that's if I could name a big one, that would be it. I don't know if I should go into the personal experiences of the places where I have felt shut out, but I also think when it comes to my art and it comes to the ways that people are able to take my narrative outside of just where I perform it, it's really, really important to make sure that you cite and you compensate the storyteller, and you really appreciate the time and the energy that goes into not only creating and cultivating the work, but also giving it a life of its own and trusting that this entity or this organization is going to go and take it in a way that is respectful to you and represents you in places where you are not. And if it enlightens and it enriches their situation, then they should definitely come back and make sure that you are also feeling that appreciation, enlightenment, and enrichment. Yeah.
Great. Great, Moon. Thank you. You reminded me of something you said yesterday, or what I got was that there may be things you do ahead of a presenter or organization does ahead of the person coming with their constituency, with their people, is part of making it a welcoming, inclusive experience for the artist as well. Thanks. Chris.
So yeah, when it comes to this question, I'm going to speak mostly to the museum world. That's kind of where my specialty is. I work as an educator. That's my background, but I'm also a singer. I sang with the Mystic River Singers, traveled all over the U.S. and Canada, and in that time got a lot of life experience learning about different Native cultures across the continent. First person listening to how elders would speak to an outsider like myself in their communities, and able to incorporate that in the pedagogy of how I teach. So I kind of mix my music career and education oftentimes together. And when it comes to Native representation in the art world, especially art museums, it's a mixed bag these days. It's getting better, I will say, but there's a lot of museums that are still stuck in the mindset of the 19th century American conservation movement. And when that movement was born, a collection of Native art at the time was focused on collecting what, the non-Native art world thought of as authentic art, to save it because the cultures were vanishing, and so they would typically only collect at the time because of the time frame, Western tribes, Plains cultures, and Southwestern pottery and other Southwestern arts. So it's not uncommon to be in a museum in New England and go into the North American Indian Art Gallery and see a collection presented and have no Northeastern art represented whatsoever. No ashland basketry, no wampum work, but full of Plains beadwork from artists of the past and Southwestern pottery. That's just a reflection of that time. And museums in 2021 sometimes still reflect that. And when I do see that, I often get pretty critical of it. So what do we do to fix it? Well, I mean, the Abbey is a great example of that. My predecessor, Cinnamon Catlin Legutko, began a decolonization initiative. And what that really meant was, in the beginning, taking the content of the museum, stripping it down, and instead of using third-person interpretation through the sciences of archaeology and anthropology, as colonial museums have constantly done with Native histories and arts, instead the museum the content would host the voices of the living Wabanaki communities that we have within the state of Maine. And by doing so, we don't just show historical art. That's one of the ways that we can fix it, is we can show art from artists that are living today and now. And also understand that art is diverse, especially for Native people. So, the idea of Native art having to only be in the languages of traditional arts is something we need to grow beyond. And art needs, Native fine arts just need to be seen as art. So that allows the artists to be authentic in their own world, just as our ancestors were when they created their pieces, reflecting the world that they see today in whatever medium they choose. Sometimes people see a Native painter painting on canvas and say, that's just not traditional. Well, that's not true, because our ancestors painted on everything, and kept records of our histories and all of that, and also, stories and memories. And so, that gets translated, so that's what things that I would look for the museum world to continue to do, is to continue to represent the living Native artists that we have today.
Great, Chris. Thank you. Thank you. Samuel, where are we missing the mark, and what's something that could be better on track?
Yeah, I think that something that I think a difficult thing to take in is something that's really necessary, is understanding that, like, we represent the culture of the country, sort of despite our best intentions sometimes, and that intent isn't necessarily worth anything. You can't project your intent into the world, right? You can only make claims of it, and people claim good intent all the time when they don't necessarily have it. So you can't trust it. You can trust in actions. And I think the difficult part is that, like, we live in a country on stolen land, built by stolen bodies with stolen labor, and we still have that. That is still a thing that happens. We have more people in prison right now than any other country in the world. That's a number, not a percentage. And a disproportionate amount of those people are Black, doing slave labor. And so this is all to say that it's all wrapped up, and it's in every crevice. So it's very easy to make make mistakes, or it's very easy to overlook things, and it's very easy to do harm, right? That you're perpetuating a whole system. So, you know, acting very deliberately in everything you do is necessary, and you're going to drop the ball a lot, and you're going to get hit in the face a lot, and you have to take it and keep moving. And I think it's a difficult thing to accept, and it's a difficult thing to keep taking, but I think a lot of us take those hits in the face a lot all day, every day, and maybe it's not necessarily recognized. So a time that I was, you know, I'm reluctant to talk personal stories just because I think there's a way to, you know, Black pain can be fetishized in some ways, but I will say that, not to put you all on blast, but like MICA did send out an email that was talking about this day, and it was a flyer, and it had a lot of pictures of people who were participating today, but it didn't have a picture of Chris or Moon or myself or Ashley Bryant. And those are, you know, relatively simple things to do. It wouldn't have been difficult. I've been photographed a lot in my 10 years as a performer. Ashley Bryant is 97 years old. There's almost 100 years worth of photos of him kicking around someplace. And I, you know, obviously this was not an intended thing, but it's something that when I look at it and I see that you're doing a panel on diversity, but your actual representation of what that is going to be is absent, you know, it makes me feel a certain way.
That's a great example, Samuel. That's a good example. Thank you for bringing it up. Bridget.
Difficult to follow that, like as solid concrete points. And,
Love them.
oh yeah, no, we got to do that, and we have to have these uncomfortable, awkward conversations, because I know as someone who goes through the world in a disabled body, it is exhausting just to be me, and that's not even accounting for the trauma that we're all dealing with right now, because guess what? We aren't actually in boxes all next to each other. We're separated, we're isolated. And I think one of the ways that our organizations kind of missed the mark, and by kind of, I mean consistently, is by making disabled people come up and say, hey, I need these accommodations. Can I request this as a modification? Can I do that, when there's already so much internalized ableism, because we might think, oh, well, the person next to me has the worse off, so they can handle it, but I need something. And in the world that we're living in, invisible disabilities are just as valid as visible ones, but it can be harder because we may not look disabled. And so one of the really wonderful things I have seen some events do, which I feel like can be easily done in more spaces, is incorporate quiet spaces or sensory spaces that have more sound dampening qualities, low lights, low sensory input, whether these are outdoor festivals, in buildings, because guess what? Like the sensory processing disorder that people with and without disabilities face, it makes it more difficult. I mean, like everyone on this call, think about it. Who turns down the volume on their radio when they're trying to look for something? Like when you really need to concentrate. And if the world is just so intense and loud nonstop, and you're not able to remove yourself from that situation as a participant or even as a performer in these spaces, it can be exhausting. I mean, we have the privilege of going to the green room most of the time and removing ourselves from that space. But if we want to make spaces more accessible to more bodies, then we do need to be able to have kind of a timeout zone without having to remove ourselves from a location, get in our car, parking, all that stuff. Because again, that's more labor that is being placed on us, and it makes it so much more exhausting to even try to go out to these places.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Bridget. I think about the whole issue of invisibility for so many of the differently abled, not for everyone, but right, but that's a factor in that building relationships as well as education is really key in making that kind of decision, right? Thank you. Bridget.
So good. So the identity that I'm bringing to the table myself is low income, working class, outsider people, which I'm so glad is included because Maine is not the most diverse place in a lot of ways, but we got a lot of this category and it's kind of ignored in these kind of conversations. So that's cool. I'm gonna bring personal experience to the table. This is something I've experienced 3 times in 3 different cities, and maybe you have too. I love contemporary art. Took me a long time to get there, but I do. So I'm walking up to the museum, and because the museum is like this glass facade, I'm already embarrassed because the person behind the desk is watching me and I'm like I'm barely on the property, right? So I'm already like, oh my gosh, should I like start unzipping my coat now? Or that person is wicked dressed up. So I'm already in my head before I'm at the door. And then I literally can't open the door because it's like this mime glass box. Like there's no handle, there's no signs because signs are like too gauche or whatever. So now I'm conscious this woman is watching me sweat it because I literally don't know what to do with the door. So I'm like trying it, but she's used to this because it's part of the scene. So she looks down politely. And I get through the door and then there's a second door and I'm like, I'm such a mess. By the time I get to the desk, because I know some of the rules, I've done it before. I know to go to the desk, even though it's super far away for some reason, and there's no signage, and I pay and I get the little sticker. But a contemporary design trend is that the letters are shapes, but they're kind of letters too. And I don't know which way to put the sticker because it's like a triangle. And so I'm embarrassed about that too. And I just like stick it on my jacket. Like, I don't care, but really, again, like I'm sweating it. Like, how many times do I need to feel like an outsider, even though relatively speaking, I'm in this game. I know most of the rules, right? I know the language, I know the volumes, I know where to look and where not to look. So design is top of my list, like fonts that you choose or posters, architecture, like the arts of all places should get how design is not neutral, right? So can you build a new structure if you're in a place to do that anytime soon for your organization and have it breathtaking without it being foreign or scary to people? You know, talk to people about that, show them the designs and bring them to the table, because you got to have a conversation about not if your design and your organization is classist, because it is. If you're in the arts, that's just who we are, but like where it is. So I'd love to have organizations having those gross, yucky conversations about the ways in which we kind of were born into this realm that is by nature in our culture right now classist, and how design can change that and be more welcoming.
Wow. Good stuff, eh? Mates? It brings to mind, Bridget, the whole issue of welcome and of actually figuring out how an arts organization staff can have a chance to work through for themselves the issues that gets them from being holding on to image and resource and insider framework to welcoming. And that's an issue of leadership, I think, in part, and understanding that people in that world would have that, would often come with that sense of separation. I know a lot of the arts organizations I've noticed in the last couple of years in Maine have really figured out to reach for a wider audience, and they say, come as you are, right? There was that controversy about the opera and a letter about that said, you know, people aren't dressing properly, and Opera Maine just came out, boom, like, front page tone, front page exposure. You come any way you want to come, and you are welcome. This is for you. And it's very exciting that way too. So next question. If you had a magic wand, everybody, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about the way it is for you being an artist in Maine, or about the way the engagement is with arts organizations, what would that be? And Moon, appreciate you going first again. You're muted right this second.
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
hi, welcome.
Magic wands. I like them.
Oh, good.
I think that if I, at this point, could just do something, and it seems so far-fetched, I feel like whenever I am going to do a talk or share some of my spoken word piece, I comb through and I warn the audience sometimes if it might be something triggering or whatnot. But if I could reverse that, the roles, that whatever organization invites me to goes out of their way to make sure everything is comfortable for me, where I feel safe and secure and completely okay sharing everything, whatever I might want to share, whatever language I might want to use. That's something that they could do immediately and right away, because in so many, like, I recently did a residency with Indigo Arts, where a lot, when we did one of our artist shares in our talks, it was sort of predominantly white crowd, but right in the front and center there was Danielle and Marcia, and they were the ones that I knew I already felt comfortable for, because they already gave me, the freedom and the space to say, Moon, this is however you want to express it, whatever you want to call out, however you want to deliver, it's up to you. And the people who are here to consume have no control, and their feelings and and what they might be looking for has nothing to do with the ways that you should feel like you have to kind of dictate the ways that you move. So I think it's really, really important to for organizations, for people, for whoever welcomes an artist, especially a Black artist or an artist of color into that space, to make sure that they know that it's not you that needs to make us comfortable. It's the other way around. It's this organization that needs to kind of sweep off whatever rigid guidelines might be there in order to make you comfortable and let you feel like you're safe enough to express in whatever way that you might want to express.
That's very helpful and on point, Moon. It brings it made me think about outreach, right? Just that it was Daniel and Marcia right in the middle there, but part of what we're talking about is outreach and the relationships that the arts organizations are able to build in the community, and that it isn't just somebody coming in for the first time. It isn't just this, that you really are looking around and saying, who's in the community, who haven't I built a relationship with, and just starting, even if it's one person, right? And figuring out. And what a sweet thing to have more relationships with different kinds of people, right? Chris.
Yeah, so if I had a magic wand, once again, kind of pointing to the museum world out, I would wave it and normalize the idea that here in America, English is a foreign language. So therefore, within the captioning of your art, especially if it has non-American origins, there should be competing perspectives, written from different languages. And that's an important thing for reflection, of your patrons that are coming through your museum, who don't all speak English, so therefore, when they see a piece of art that has a tie to maybe their home, or maybe is tied to colonization, and the perspective may be completely opposite of what is represented in the English translation of the caption, what that does is it opens a door for, once again, that reflection. Those children can come in, they can see their own language reflected in the museum, not just the English language that they would have to translate and interpret, and they're not seeing a piece of art that they have intimate knowledge about being interpreted only through the English language, and they get to hear from voices from their own home community. So that's one of the things I would, put out there in the world, that as much as possible, museums start utilizing the fact that not all of your art, has an English language worldview, and allow those other worldviews to be expressed as you display your art.
Thank you, Chris. I think we should give everybody on this panel a couple of magic wands, but for now, Samuel, what would you do? What would you do with the first one?
This is just like personal history for myself. I was born in 1979. I just turned 42 years old last week. And my father was born in 1945. His father was born in 1890. And his father, my great-grandfather, was born into slavery. My grandfather, his son, was the last of 10. And he was the baby, and all of his 9 siblings picked his share of cotton so he could go and get the education in the group. It was a 6th grade education. He took that 6th grade education and he got run out of Texas by the Klan, and he made it to Arizona. And in Arizona, he got a job as a janitor for a bank, which was a middle-class job then. He had a wife and a child, my father. My father got a middle-class education, a middle-class life, but he still grew up drinking colored water, going through colored doors, hiding from white people, risking his life traveling around the country. And then he moved to Maine, where my mother was from. And so I got to have this context. This is the context that I'm in. And if I could wave a magic wand and never again have any arts organization ask the great-grandson of a slave to do something for free, I would be a happy person. There is a context to asking artists to doing things for free, and there's, I think Bridget will probably have something to say about that with class. I'm not going to jump on you for what you need to say, but I know there is a class distinction when you are asked to do something for free from a class above you. And I know as a Black person, a Black American descendant of slaves, asking me to do something for free for white people who are well off, it means something different than if I were a white man. And so the magic wand would be, don't ask Black people to do stuff for free, and appreciate people for the context they're in. But you have to want to know what that context is.
Thank you. Just gonna wait 1 second.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Bridget.
Okay. I don't have actually I do have some wands, but they light on fire. I got wings behind me, and for this, I'm putting on the crown, because that's how you do it. And of course, I have a crown next to my office desk. What I would like to have change really is universal design for all. So what that means is what benefits one population is going to benefit another. I mentioned before invisible disabilities. What this means is mental health, PTSD, mobility issues, vision challenges. Bridget mentioned like the mime box door. Have a really obvious doorknob, like really would be that difficult to have like push, pull somewhere. It's gonna benefit people. A ramp, like these are things that will benefit more than just the people that are asking for it. Disability is not a bad word. One of my best friends loved them, invited me to an event, and I was using my cane, and she went through the whole speech of, because you are a person with you're very special, you have needs that are, and I'm like, I'm disabled, and that's much shorter, and it's okay. It's not a bad thing. We do tend to view disability through a deficit-based lens. So what can a person not do? What are their challenges? And I think one of the other things that if a venue, an art center producer is wondering, how can we incorporate disabled bodies more in our productions, our spaces, view it through what can a person do? What do they excel at? And please have chairs, seating options. Like I can't do some parades, some things, because guess what? Me versus a car, I lost that one. And I need to sit down places. And if going off of what Bridget said before, if you have a piece of furniture that doesn't obviously look like a person can sit on it, or like it's a bench, have something that says, hey, please sit here, relax, because it's not just going to benefit the elderly, the people who are using mobility aids, maybe the mother who is able-bodied and needs to sit down with her kid for a minute is going to use it. So think about what is beneficial for everyone.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Bridget.
So good. I love the specifics. I'm a hands-on person. I love specific directions. Thank you for that. Okay, my wand waving. I would want the idea of, accessibility to, a wider audience to not be about money, because it isn't. Like poor people will spend their money on something that they know is cool, that they value. So I'm not saying don't do free Fridays, please do free Fridays, but to say, well, this is how we're trying to engage lower income people. We're trying to have programs that are cheaper, or we're offering scholarship or whatever. That my wand would be to be able to see and understand that your product that has value to you does not have value to other people, and that is cool. And if we, are advocating for the arts, then we know what the, basic humanitarian, benefits of the arts are, and we want to get people there, then that's cool. But if your product is typically of value by people who have cultural capital, in other words, who have been there, done that, and they know what opera is for, and they know how to sit through it, a show in the theater or whatever. What is of value to people in your community? And my wand would also bestow not having to ask around, like the idea of a bunch of white women in silk scarves, like around a table going, what do the poor people love? Like, is so gross and cringy. And I'm sure everyone knows that, but that is a real thing. A great model for this is to have a system of interns from your community, from the outsider community that you want to outreach to, and have them help with outreach, so that as they become older, then they are actually the outreach masters, and they know what people want, and they know how to deliver it, and they know how to get y'all out of your building into public spaces, throwing parties instead of, giving out tickets or, flyers to your gallery. So that's my wand that I'm waving.
Loving your wand, loving everyone's wand. I think those of us here on the panel, we know that I got to work for 8 years starting up Art at Work with the city of Portland, right? And I would ask, working with unions, working with city departments, working with communities, and figuring out art-based solutions on things that had nothing to do with the arts, racism in the public works department, low morale in the police department, high turnover in health and human services among the CNAs. And it took me a while to get up to speed, but I realized the question, I just needed to meet people, not ask people what they did or if they made art, because everyone said no. But it turned out so many of the employees actually had very intense creative lives in ways that I just was unfamiliar with, as readers, as book clubs, as making these paper dolls, as making these environments out of cardboard and paper that were tremendously intricate, and they all had each other, they knew each other's work, and pottery, and just all these things that you wouldn't necessarily think of. So that's my tip for that's my magic wand moment or something. I thank you all. I asked you all if you were up for it to think of a question that you might want to bring up with each other. Is that, Moon, does it put you on the spot to ask if there is something that you'd like to bring up or say that you haven't said yet?
Not necessarily a question that I want to bring up, but I really appreciate Samuel for saying that, what he said, because I think so many times, especially as an advocate for younger generations, I work a lot with youth and I want them to be able to see themselves on certain stages. And so I have to compromise of myself just to make sure that I'm there, regardless if I'm being compensated or not, just so that they could have that vantage point of seeing a person of color on that. And and this happens a lot, where a lot of people of color have to compromise and say, well, if I say no, then there won't be any color there. Then if I say no to come to this table, if I say, I need more, or you're not paying me my worth, my time, or for, the expertise that I could bring, that I have to now risk my voice, my community's voice, my art not being represented on that table, or going and compromising somebody else to come on to that and know that they are willing to give or be given less. And so it's really, really important to be more forthcoming and be the actual initiator of saying, I'm going to make sure that, I'm doing the work and doing the due diligence to make sure that you are compensated for your time, your art, your representation. Like if you go and look at some of the videos I do with Indigo, I say, we bring rhythm, we bring a spice, we bring a certain salt to a situation, and we enrich it. And I know that for myself, even just from everything that I've learned from my father and the ways that he storytells is so different. And it has motivated me so much to be able to bring that style through parable, to be able to bring a worldview of a child soldier to this venue that might have never had that idea, or have never had that experience. And I know that it's going to teach. And I know that the people who invited me to be there knew that I was going to enrich it, even though they weren't willing to compensate. You would have felt my absence, or you would have felt the void of me not being there. And so I think it's very, very important to make sure that people of color are compensated. And then now to take it to another level that Samuel brought up, of having a huge demographic here who come from a lineage of slavery, and not understanding that generational trauma and conditioning. And so thinking that their assertion just to demand that type of respect is anything but honoring of who they were and the hard work that their ancestors did. It's just wrong. And so I for me, it's not even a question or a comment. I just co-sign what Samuel said, and I'm excited that it's been able to come to this platform where about 90 people who could go out and take their tentacles to different spaces can be able to, go and sow.
Thank you. Chris.
So yeah, I mean, I'll leave with just a parting thought. A Native executive director of a Smithsonian affiliate museum is a really, really rare thing. And that's because Native peoples have a very troubled history with museums. And the museum world, I think, needs to come to terms with that in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of movement, I will say. There's momentum in the work of decolonization, but there's more that needs to be done. There's reasons why the generation before mine would not even walk into your museum, much less work for you. And so those are things that we need to overcome, because the museum workforce is remarkably undiverse, and especially when it comes to Native people. AM's last survey on art museums showed that Native people represent about 0.8 of 1% of the entire art museum workforce, when we represent about 2% of the population. So there's something missing there. And of that 0.8 of 1%, about 3/4 of them are in entry level, either in visitor services or in security. So moving people into positions of intellectual leadership in your museums, decision-making power that have have diverse backgrounds. And speaking to Moon's comments about the expertise not always coming from, a PhD being behind the name. Some of it is from life experience that you just cannot learn in a book or in a classroom. And that should be valued equitably with the person that has, maneuvered themselves through the colonial institution and earned that PhD as well. The value is equitable. And when you create these relationships, that you also make sure that they are not extractive, that there is equity built into it, so that there is something that is, going back to the community or the peoples that you are learning from.
Chris, could you just help us out and just carry that on a little further about what equity would look like or what it has looked like from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I go back to that old model that a lot of colonial museums are. They are showing work of artists that are, basically all dead and gone, and then that feeds an implicit bias. And if you can change that bias by exhibiting works of artists that live here in now, and having art displayed the way it normally is with artist statements and all of those types of things. Paying the artist at a level, because the artists those pieces were collected from the 19th century were not paid equitably. They were paid a quarter or so, or traded, buttons and things of that sort to get those high fine art pieces. And the artists of today really need to be paid at the level that they that showcases their artwork. Jeremy Frey is a superstar of the ashplant basketry world. He lives right here in the state of Maine, and if you have a native collection here in the state of Maine and you don't have Jeremy or Gabe Frey or some of the other famous basket makers, Clara Keyser, and others represented there, then the Wabanaki people that walk through your museum are like, where are they? Why are they not there? So these are the things that you want to be cognizant about, and make sure that those pieces are on display with the same level of respect that other artworks are from other worldviews.
Thanks, dear. Thank you. Samuel.
Thanks, Moon. That was very kind of you to say. I'm glad it struck a chord. I'd like to ask Bridget Matros just a generalized question about the irony of like class in these situations, because I'm a folk artist, right? I play a folk type of music, and like Chris was just saying, this is not a music I have a PhD in. This is a music that I played, and my grandfather played, and his father played, and on and on and on. I inherited it, and so many, I think maybe like Moon is saying, storytelling. So much of our art is actually folk art, and it is like sometimes it is a little navel gazy, upper class looking down at what the how the lower class is creating, and elevating that art without elevating people who make it. I think maybe that's what we're all kind of saying up here to some degree. But yeah, that's my question.
Wait, what was the question in there though?
Do you see that irony, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, I see it. It's crazy.
Great.
It's crazy. I mean, it's like the joke, right? It's like the arts getting a capital A is insane. And that's gotta be specific to, Western European. That's gotta be, because everywhere else I've traveled, everybody's dancing, everybody's making stuff, everybody's singing. But the idea that you have to like pay to go see or witness art, yeah, I see the irony is my answer.
Bridget, when we were talking yesterday, and I don't think you all were, did you get to hear her talk about the boxes in the project? Did Chris, Samuel? Yes. Can you just share a little bit about that? That really caught me up and just really shifted something in my understanding of what's possible that I think would be great to hear.
Well, that's fun. Yeah, just really quick because I want people to be able to answer some of the Q&A. But so an example of giving people what, meeting them where they are, whatever, is, at the core of our mission, like there's all these layers, the mission has like 500 sexy words in it, but in the very core of it is creativity, is like the experience, like the power of art, right? So that's a creative experience and people learn through play. So part of my job at Waterfall Arts is to throw parties when they're free in their community and they're outside whenever possible. So yay COVID, because we can get out of our small spaces and into the open. But so one that we do is called Sea Barf. Cardboard boxes are really fun. Doesn't strike you as an arts event. And it's free and people come into, at the time it was our basement, and there's 300 cardboard boxes and rolls of tape. And you just made stuff. And there's no instructions. There's nobody checking you at the door. There's no direct asks for money or if you're going to stay or if you're going to go or it's just like, come and do the thing and leave. And you're in our building, yay. And you made some friends and you felt good. And that's step number one. So throw a party, people.
Hey, Samuel, before I ask Bridget, I wanted to say, I think they're encouraging us to continue among us this conversation. So just to give you the heads up on that. Samuel, is there something else as well as that question that you wanna? Okay, Bridget Rankowski.
Oh, cool. My wrap up is so nice and pretty. It's got a little bow on it. So I think what we've all talked about in our own different ways is the importance of representation. And represent the many facets of identity, both in Maine and the cultures that exist here and the multi-layers. I mean, as an autistic performer, if I look at Hollywood, it's a bunch of straight white autistic characters. Like, that's not representative of who I am. And one of the things that I really want to promote is to be what I would have liked to see as a kid. Be out there, out loud, be myself, that authenticity, because I've wasted too much of my life trying to conform to what some people's expectation of as an artist, as we talked about. Because yeah, in other cultures, like there's streetlight shows, like you pull up and like in between the traffic lights, like you get a performance. And I think one of the real things that we have to do here in the state of Maine is recognize the diversity of performers, of populations here, and how can we effectively compensate and promote not just our current level of artists and performers, but the next generation, because whoa, these kids,
Oh, for God's sake.
they're gonna save the world. Like, just saying, like kids these days, like, whoa, like future is good.
That's great. Thank you. Moon, it feels like forever since I know we've just gone around, but let's see. How about anybody burning something here? Shall I?
If I could just say something real
Please.
quick, just to tie in so much of
Don't rush.
the conversation of the museum and the art and the compensation, the representation and the expertise not represented through PhDs and educational structures that were created from narratives that came from kind of more of an oppressive or experimental views, I would say. I think I remember I recently went to Cornell to screen a small documentary I'm working on about the asylum seekers who recently came, and both the professor and my director are older white gentlemen. I adore them both, and we have a mutual respect for each other. But they were so excited to take me to the exhibit of the African arts, and they're just like, "Oh, Moon, you have to see this!" And there was a white woman going around explaining the things to me, And, and it was just so, for me, it was just mind blowing. And it excites me that, Chris, that you're running a museum of your own art, not only of the art that's and the representation that's happening now of the worldview of your people, but even in the past, that you're able to actually give that narration. Because it really, like, it pinched my spine a little bit to even hear her like articulate some of the things that she was saying. And I knew like I needed to, like, that needed to be corrected. And for me, and it just doesn't only go with the African art. And so, she was like, well, isn't this great? I wanted to be like, yeah, that's my grandma's, but I was just, I kind of just let it go, kind of, just to respect kind of the space that I was in. But in so many of these places, like in France and so many of the colonial representative nations, there are so much of my culture that's there and they think is gone. And I'm like, no, I to this day, I have family members that still live in this way, that still do these dances, that are still making these tools. And to be able to have some sort of power or initiative go towards recruiting and edifying those very people to become the backbone and the foundations of how this is delivered or represented, could start to heal kind of the breaking and the trauma that came. Because like Chris said, it's not like these artists were compensated the prices that they deserved for the money that came into being able to build the structure that they're being placed on, and then the fancy glass things that nobody can go in and touch. And so I think it's really, really important that even when you think about the storytelling and the folk music and the dances and the drums and the feathers. I actually I have a friend, Chief Wampamiweg from Massachusetts, who showed me his, and for him to explain to me what each feather meant and where it came from, and the representations of that, it became more sacred than someone telling me that, having a European person telling me that from a museum and being like, well, this is very special to them. And it's, I want to hear from them telling me and really feeling the spirit and being able to at that time sing the song and give like homage and honor to that piece, because people don't understand that in this world where we are elevating. I was watching a movie with Elon, this is going to be so like everywhere, but Elon Musk sending all the satellites to the sky that look like stars, and we're no longer able to actually see the natural structure of what the sky was represented to us. And there's generations that are dying out of that. There are also generations that are dying out of a way of life, of an understanding of a different connection with the ground and with the earth and with our environment that is really, really important to capture. And in order to capture them, we have to compensate. Like in my land right now, there are languages that are dying out. And so the elders need to be able to have that safe space and that, and the resources to be able to preserve our language. We have over 87 languages. And so like for me, when it comes to the collection of art, the protection of art, it comes with the work that goes into edifying and creating that space and giving the authority to the people who are representative of that art to really take the lead role and guide and consult and really direct the ways that it's represented, protected, and cultivated. Yeah, sorry, that was like...
No need. The opposite, whatever the opposite is of apology, Moon. So everyone, with your located heart and your clear mind and perhaps your silenced devices temporarily, I feel like we have created community. Maine Arts Commission, Martha and Megan and Ryan, they're all saving David, saving the chat, saving the questions. I wanted, Maine Arts Community was very clear that they're going to have links available that take you to each of these amazing, regular, ordinarily remarkable, brilliant human beings, the 5 who just shared with us their takes on things and their lives. And so it's also, they're all very findable online, and another nice way to start building the relationship. I wanted to mention the only 2 I know to to let everyone listening know that Chris is tonight being interviewed online. Portland Press Herald is doing a thing called Maine Live. And I forget, is it Bob Keys is interviewing you? Who's interviewing you, Chris?
Yeah, it's Main Voices Live, and I'll be a one-on-one hour-long interview, interactive. You can ask questions as well with Bob Keys. Yeah.
Great, at 7, right?
At 7, yes.
And then Samuel James is being on an artist spotlight that Portland Innovations is doing. James, Samuel, is it Wednesday? Tomorrow?
No, it's on Friday.
On Friday.
Friday at noon, I believe.
Friday at noon, exactly. So that's findable at Portland Innovations, and it's free. Both are obviously free at the moment. And Bridget, do we want to just share something? We'll go Bridget Moon, share something upcoming, something that you'd like, an artist's name you'd like us to know?
No, I'm just gonna say, if you're not following or know about Indigo Arts, I would just definitely direct you over there. Get to know that space. It's special and
Well,
sacred.
It is. And Samuel, back to Indigo. You're the current artist in residence there, correct?
I will be in February.
In February.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And Bridget Rankowski, anything?
Yeah, go see Indigo, like amazing. You can look up some of my stuff, Bridget Rankowski on Facebook. My performance name is Bridget Sinclair, Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow our social circus at The Way We Move. But yeah, go forth and be awesome.
Lovely, thank you.
I spent a fun 2 hours unearthing my LinkedIn page. Didn't know that was still a thing. So y'all can jump on LinkedIn and look me up there. But I also put my email. There's so many great questions in the Q&A that we didn't get to. So by all means, I would love to continue this conversation. So email me at bridget@waterfallarts.org. I'd love to keep talking about this stuff.
And in
Great.
the most humble way, I'm gonna say you can Google me.
In the most humble way. Thank you for saying that, though. Obviously, these 5 are a real treasure, main resources as individuals and as artists. So we've assumed from the beginning of forming this panel that we'd actually get to stay in touch, that partly with the reason why we wanted to make sure the people listening thought ahead is that for appropriate compensation, there's real resources and ways of getting help to think about your situation and how to go for the more welcoming, inclusive, and equitable arts organizations and communities. Thank you so much. It's been such a delight, you all. Thank you.